Hi, and welcome to Griefclass. For those who are new to my channel, my son Tim did pass away going on about 3.5 years ago from the time of making this video. He died suddenly of epilepsy complications, and that's why I'm here. So I talk about my own path through grief, and I talk about many topics that affect those of us who have had a major loss in our life. And by major, I don't want to eliminate something that sounds as simple as a huge job loss, as a divorce that you really didn't want to happen. You know, there are many things. In my case, all of my experience and all of my life experience comes from the loss of my son. So it kind of tends to trend that way, but I hope that if you've been through any other kind of loss that you will find some of these topics helpful for you. So as always, if you feel like you are really stuck or struggling, if you feel like you don't have hope for the future, please look below. There is the suicide hotline there. I promise you that they can help you until, just to get through until you can see the other side to start working on this. There is help and hope out there. And also, if you need long-term counseling, it's a wonderful thing. It has helped me in many ways. And I definitely recommend counseling just to have someone to bounce ideas off of. Not even, you know, necessarily advice, just to have a place to make sure that you're thinking through all of these things. Unfortunately, a lot of people will not seek counseling. My channel and my videos are definitely not a substitute for that, but I hope that they help you through some of the little things that have to do with grief. And unless you're really with a true grief counseling, sometimes there's just things that someone has to have been through it to understand. And then you can take this topic, go to your counselor and say, you know, this is also a concern of mine. It's typical for many people who've lost someone or something. And you can bring it up to them. It can be just like a conversation starter. So today, I think this is one of the most important topics that I will ever do. I hope to do thousands more videos and thousands of more topics because I believe that grief is just tough and loss is tough, and there are so many things that I want to say. But this video today about, am I wallowing in my grief or am I mourning healthy? Is the most important video ever, because you will either in your own self feel like sometimes, man, am I ever going to feel like I'm grieving in a healthy way. Grieving in a healthy way doesn't mean that you're done and over. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about, am I just even one little baby step at a time? Am I doing this in a healthy way for myself? Or am I stuck and losing my hope and my hope for the future? Because no matter what we've been through, we cannot let that happen. We cannot lose our hope for the future. It's okay to have those feelings, but we can't have any behavior associated with that. So we can't, I don't want to see anyone commit suicide over feelings of helplessness, like there is no hope out there. And the problem is that there are so many reasons why we might ask ourselves this. Am I wallowing or am I mourning health in a healthy way? And this topic is so huge that I am just going to barely scratch the surface on this video. And then I have more aspects of it, and this video and probably this exact same topic will come up again, only with different articles and different things that I've read. I'm just really scratching the surface on some of this. So some of the books that I'm reading to get through some of the thoughts about how do you know if you're wallowing versus I'm mourning, I'm hurting, this isn't easy. This is one of them. I've mentioned him before. It's Alan Wolfelt, Living in the Shadow of the Ghosts of Grief. It really talks about reconciling old losses and feeling your loss. It's very good so far. I'm working through that. This is another one here that I've showed before, Companioning the Bereaved. I'm doing this one too because I'm also a pastor's wife, and I feel like as a leader in my church, I want to make sure that the church is getting it right. And I feel like in many, many cases, churches neglect people who are really hurting. They mean well, some don't even mean well, but most mean well. But I just know from experience that my husband and I, as much as we cared, we still haven't always done it right with hurting people. We're only 3.5 years into having lost our child. And if I could have the compassion and the understanding now for all the years that we've been in ministry together, I would have less regrets about how I handled other situations. That's why when I talk about situations where I have not been treated well or where I felt like people didn't understand, there is no judgment there, because I've been the one probably on the other side who just didn't understand. But we still have to talk about those things. We have to talk about why some people may treat us like we're wallowing in our grief. We need to still be able to talk about those subjects. Again, there's no judgment. It's just that these things have to stop happening. And my goal, I don't know if I'll reach it or how long it'll take, but I'm dedicated for many, many, many years to try to slowly change the opinion of grief in the society. And there are people who are well ahead of me. This man, this Alan Wolfelt, he is light years ahead of me. A lot of what I am able to process now, I know inherently because I've had a loss and I already kind of knew, but this has made it okay for me to process these and think, yes, he's right. I'm not going to apologize to anybody for grieving. I'm just not going to do it. And he is thankfully getting a lot of traction. He's in Colorado at a hospital, actually. Like, he is a counselor. He does have he is a author, educator, and grief counselor. But anyway, he's definitely trying to go through and change society's view of grieving, and definitely the clinical view of grieving. He's trying to kind of take the approach of going through counselors a lot of times, like his, what would you call it, his colleagues, and he's trying to change how grief counseling is done. But he's also trying to do it in society, and he's trying to set up groups of people who understand grief and know what's normal and what's not, and to help people who are grieving, rather than everybody. Just like when I lost my son, everyone came to the funeral. I tried to find on my own who could help walk this path with me, and it was very difficult. You know, you get really close and you think, oh yeah, this person's with me to the very end, and then they really aren't. They go a little ways with you. Some people make it clear from the start that they're not with you at all. Like, they love you. Here's a cake. I'm never going to call you again. But then there's other people who go farther with you, and they remember to kind of, you know, help you. And so you kind of bare your heart to them, and then you find out, oh no, that wasn't the person either. And so this path of finding people to walk through us with this is tough. And I've made another video about that, and I will continue to try to digest all of this information and put it back out there. I hope that you'll understand that on these videos, I'm just trying to formulate or analyze all of these topics myself. So I'm not just here with do this number one, do this number two, number three. You'll be through grief. You're great. Life's good. I'm still on this journey myself. I'm just here to talk about my own experience and what has helped, what I've learned, what I'm trying to learn. And so I really, really hope that it's helpful to you. But please know that I might appear kind of unorganized because I'm digesting all these articles myself, and I'm just kind of letting you be a part of it. So I'm sorry if it isn't 100% the answer that you're looking for. But this video is titled Wallowing versus Mourning. Like, how do we know? So first of all, the reason that this comes up is because we don't trust ourselves. We've heard about wallowing. The fact that wallowing is even a word tells us that someone can fall into self-pity. Someone can fall into wallowing. They can grieve way too long. Just by definition, the fact that that word exists makes anyone who's going through something kind of fearful just inside. Like, am I losing, hope? Am I letting myself get too low? Am I crying in public too much? That kind of thing. And then society itself. Everyone out there has their own opinion about timelines for grief, what's healthy, what's not. And it makes it very hard when you're the griever, because what happens is that you innocently had a loss in your life, even if it's your fault somehow. But just say, in my case, my son passed away. Sorry, my nose. I didn't do anything to deserve that or have that happen. And I never meant to, or in any way asked for everyone in society that I know to suddenly have a judgment about me and whether I'm doing well or not. I never meant to enter into that conversation with anyone, because I don't believe it's their business. You know, it's my close-knit family's business, and it's people I trust. It's their business if I'm doing well or not doing well. But pretty soon, especially in a small town like where I live, everyone is watching you and seeing how you're reacting, and you're walking into those restaurants for the first time again. And of course, this is all about 3 years ago for me. My loss is going on 4 years in July of 2022. But I remember vividly getting out of the car and walking into restaurants, and everyone's like this. And it's not, you know, hey, look at her hair, or, you know, she looks funny today. It's, oh man, there she is. There's that, you know, their son just passed away type thing. And at work, and it's all a thing. And then all of a sudden, everyone takes it upon themselves to kind of to watch you, because they're fearful themselves. What if I go through a loss? And they're watching you to see how you do. And when you don't do well, it's like a feeling of failure. At least that's what I've done to myself. So I am constantly on the search for processing everything that's happened to me, all of the good things that have happened. I want to process that, but I also want to process those bad experiences where I've had some people pretty much say that I wasn't grieving in a healthy way. And I've had that comment made to me on 2 occasions, only 2. And yeah, I'm always just processing it, because my husband and I talk about it all the time. We're more educated in grief than most of the people who had any comment for us. I'm a nurse. I had some psychology training. And then obviously I'm the one going through it. So I'm an expert on my own grief, whether I want to be or not. That's what this man brings out. Alan Wolfelt, he talks about how you are an expert in your own grief. It doesn't mean that we should wallow, because he makes it very clear that if you do that, you never will work to the other side. But he talks about how people who are trying to help others with grief, companioning them, that if you go in as an expert because you have more of a clear mind, then you're never going to be successful in helping someone. So the articles that I want to talk about today, I know I've rambled a little bit, and I'm sorry about that. Again, just trying to process all of this for myself. I've read 3 articles that were very interesting about wallowing. The first one is by Tina Gilbertson, and all of these will be posted below. You can just link to them and read them for yourself. I'm not going to read the entire articles. I just want to give you some thoughts on how to know if you're wallowing versus grieving the way that you should. What is healthy, what isn't. She says that inattention to your loss, if you don't pay attention to it, it makes bad feelings worse and it prolongs them. So in other words, she says, the name of her article is something about wallowing on purpose, or wallow as much as you can. And she doesn't mean in the sense of having no hope, but she just means let those feelings out, work through it. She's a big believer in wallowing, if you want to call it that. Distracting yourself too much from any pain makes you stuck in it. So I've talked a lot about the dual process method of grief, where you grieve or you face your loss and then you take a break and you go do something that you could never have done with the other person. You refresh yourself, get sleep, renew yourself, and then if you have to, you come back to grieving again. But she says that you can't distract yourself too much. You can't just be very stoic and say, I'm never going to deal with this. It happened, you know, too bad, moving on. That doesn't work for most people, because you're still grieving inside. You may not be outwardly mourning to where people can see you, or you may not be letting it out, but there's still that grief inside, and it just has bad health effects. The fastest way through pain is through it. So she believes you just have to go through it. I've printed out some of these things. And just go read the article. She talks about how your relationships become closer when you are not afraid to grieve. And that's true. I do want to warn you, which she doesn't talk about. And I don't know that she's been through grief. I don't know. She doesn't state that. You know, there will be some criticism and there will be some other things you have to face. There is a consequence to letting your grief out. There's a consequence to yourself, and there's a consequence when you dare to grieve in public in any way. There will be that judgment of people watching you and making their own decisions in their own hearts of whether you're doing it right or not. Doesn't mean that you avoid that. You have to go through even that part. I'm here to tell you that you just have to go through it, and you have to build a confidence again that you are the expert in your own grief. You're the one who went through whatever happened, and even if others poo-poo it and think it's small and don't understand your connection to the job or your connection to your spouse or your connection to whatever you lost, you shouldn't have to explain that. And so she talks about how your relationships become closer if they were the right ones. She talks about how you build your confidence over time again. When you refuse to grieve, you know, it's like saying, I don't have the right to do this. And so you lose your confidence, she says. It's kind of like you feel bad for doing something that you know you should do. So when you start crying or when you start grieving or facing your grief, if you tell yourself, oh my goodness, people are around, or oh no, I can't feel that way, then you're going to lose your confidence, because what you know to be true and what you're trying to do, they're false. You're trying to put on a fake front for other people, and yet you know that if they really saw your pain, that they might feel differently about you. And so stuffing it down makes you lose confidence. And I'm going to do a video just about that on its own, because my confidence really suffered during my grief. And it surprised me. It wasn't an effect that I thought would happen. And again, you know, as counterintuitive as it may be, the fastest way out of emotional pain is through it. And the biggest statement that I like from her is that when you try not to feel as you do, you've got the pain of the misery and the despair and everything that you're going through, and then you add the pain of struggling on top of that. So if you deny your pain, if you try to hide your pain, you are just adding that battle of fighting your pain on top of the pain you already have. So don't do that. Read that article below. I thought it was really good. I don't know much about this person. It's from Psychology Today, but I found some of those things to match up, you know, with what I'm doing. The other one is by Brad Hambrick. It's also below. The difference between wallowing and mourning. He differentiates wallowing from mourning by whether you still have hope and you are desiring to be joyful again. His definition is that wallowing is not a momentary bout of sadness, but a feeling that you can never get better. My life's never going to be the same. Tim is never coming back. My life's just over. I mean, I lost a child, right? My life's over. What can I do? If you ever feel those depths of hopelessness and helplessness, then that is time to seek help, because that could be self-pity and wallowing. Comparing yourself to others, you know. I guess I fell into this a little bit, like, you know, yeah, they were smart when they were young. They had 6 kids and all their kids are healthy and none of them have ever been to the doctor. And here I only had 3 kids and, you know, one is sick, very, very sick, and ends up dying. And how is that fair? And all of this. So, I mean, yes, I've had those thoughts, especially early on. But I also, at the same time, have been very hopeful about my life. I knew that I was blessed to have other things in my life. And I've never felt like I had no hope of ever kind of moving to a place where I was happy and healthy again, and still carry the grief in a healthy way. But I've always had hope for the future. And And that's what he says. Unless you just lose all hope for the future, your grief is normal and it's fine. It's actually okay. You're doing okay unless you wake up and for more than just a fleeting thought, you have no hope. Then that could be wallowing. So you have to have hope for the future. And then the third one that is also down below, Jane Carter. She says, the reason that we often don't talk about our pain in public or even let ourselves express our pain is for this fear of wallowing. We've been told in society that you should get over things very quickly, that you should not be feeling this loss. It's been 6 months. Why aren't you doing better? Why do you still cry occasionally? Why do you still, you're out in public and you still break down? That's not acceptable. Why are you doing that? And we learn some of those things as a child. And so either it's from within ourselves or other people learn those same things. And so they put that on us. And so we realize pretty soon in society, like I've learned, I've had 2 bad experiences in my life since my son died. I've learned from 2 experiences what is acceptable in certain places and what isn't. And really briefly, I've talked about this in a previous video, but I had one family member. This was about 2.5 years after my son had died, and I was at a kind of a Christmas party type thing, and for some reason I was just feeling it that day. I was just feeling the loss. I wasn't unwilling to participate. I just was feeling, I just wasn't happy-go-lucky, ha ha ha, it's Christmas, smile, let's, be super happy. I was kind of feeling it a little bit that day. And I always miss my son on holidays because it's just not the same, And I was, verbally told, like later on, not at that moment, thankfully, but later on, I was told in no uncertain terms that, I need to be happy at these parties and that it's too hard on them if I'm not happy-go-lucky all the time. And so that was very, very painful to go through. And I really questioned myself and I really asked myself about this. Am I wallowing or am I a person who's still in grief and I'm just slowly moving toward being better? And I've done a lot of reading because I didn't want to get it wrong. I don't want to be someone who is sad all the time. I want to be someone who sees some improvement in my life. And I know myself enough to know that I wake up every day hopeful for a lot of things. And so this was a very painful thing for me because I thought, man, you have one bad day, and this person knows me and sees me happy at other times. But I felt like for a long time, like it just added to my grief. It was a very painful situation. And I felt like I couldn't even have one bad day or be off a little bit in front of this person. And so I never will again. And if I suspect that I'm going to start grieving, I will leave that environment. And it's sad because I love this person, but they just aren't old enough or mature enough to understand that grief hits people in different ways. And I've just had to really forgive that person and move on. And then I've had one other experience in a public place where, again, it's, going on like 3 years since I lost my son. And I started crying, not intentionally too loud, but a few people around me kind of heard it. And in no uncertain terms, it was like from the leadership of that event. The speaker was saying something, about her life and everything. And she's never lost a child, never lost a husband, never had anything happen like that. And yet she said something about, life's hard and we just all we lose spouses. Children die and things happen and, we just have to trust Jesus with it type thing. And I was just sitting there stunned. This was a group of people who I'd kind of turned to and thought, would understand. And I learned in no uncertain terms that, again, no fault, no judgment, but they just aren't, it's just not going to work for me. So I've had to totally remove myself from that environment. I can't do that with the family member. It's a little bit more difficult. But from this environment, there is no reason that I have to be there. And it is okay if I, self-accept myself, and I know that the Lord has grace for me. From a Christian point of view, if we want to get into that, Jesus has more grace for me. He knows that I may falter in trying to better myself on this path, but it doesn't matter. He is patient with me. He is trying to help me and be positive at all times. And so I just don't belong in an environment where I am not able to grieve if it comes up. There's no benefit to me in publicly grieving. It's embarrassing. It doesn't help you really. But if it ever happens again, I have to make sure I'm in an environment where that's acceptable. And a lot of it is just kind of maturing in my own life on what type of people I want around me. And I never can feel comfortable around a group of people who are going to down someone who might be really stuck. Long story short, whoever I spend my time with has to be people who may not want to get stuck themselves. I mean, that's fine. I don't really want to get stuck myself either. But I don't ever want to judge someone else's stuckness. I don't ever want to make a commentary on, man, they're really stuck. I want to be that compassionate person like this book talks about. I want to companion people who are going through anything, whether this is about the bereaved, about grieving, but he talks about, just really being that person who signs up for the long haul with people. And I want to be that person. And so I have to be around people who model that behavior. So thankfully, my husband is one of those people. I mean, he will go to the ends of the earth with people. And I have other family members and people at our church who do model that. They just stick with you no matter what happens, no matter how long it takes. And so it's been very hard. I've had to withdraw from a couple of situations. She also says that wallowing, again, is feeling like you will always be like this. Self-compassion is allowing yourself to mourn, and it doesn't define you. So I am not defined by just the fact that my son died. In this situation, talking to you, it's all you know of me. I tell you every time I make a video about how my son died. So if you only see me in these situations, you will think I'm someone who just is defined by my grief. But I'm not. I travel. I have a lot of things going on in my life. I help other people. I work full time and really love what I do. And so I have many other aspects. So my son dying is not my whole identity. The only reason it's even more of my identity than maybe others is because I'm here making these videos and building this channel. But if your grief defines you in the sense that you bring it up all the time, like you're out in public, and for me, it's been 3.5 years, so I don't bring it up all the time. I think at first it was good for me to do that, just warn people, listen, I'm just struggling right now, I've been through a loss. If I get up and leave the table, or if I can't stay, or if something happens, then I just want you to know why. I think that's good. It lets people know. I was reading in one of these articles, I'll talk about that later, but how people used to wear black armbands. The men would wear black armbands and the women would wear black if they had a loss. And it was to just let people know, hey, just have some kid gloves for me. Just give me a little space. I just want to let you know that I've been through something. And that's how we used to handle it. Now I walk in like this and no one knows that I've had a loss. And in one sense, it's good. It forces me to slowly move toward normalcy again and slowly move toward a betterment of being out in society where, my identity is not all about the fact that I've lost a child. I have many other identities that I want to pursue. But I just feel like it's sad that we've lost that because it would just be a visual reminder of people, hey, whether you understand it or not, this person's had a loss, and let's just give them some space. But we don't do that. So people who are grieving, they just can't get it out. They can't have any space to grieve to where they can move forward. And that's what this article talks about too. Wallowing becomes self-protection, she says. She says that if you are wallowing, you're just unwilling to go seek help from a counselor. You're unwilling to tell people about your experience to get better. That's what wallowing is. You're just like, it's never going to get better anyway, so I'm just going to feel sorry for myself and isolate myself, and I'm not going to make any movement toward getting back in society. I'm not going to go get my job back. I'm not going to go move forward in any way. Whereas when you have self-compassion, you can still cry, you can still feel bad for yourself, you can still have all of these things going on, but you're reaching out all the time. And so sorry, I have kind of a sore tooth. I just got my braces off and I got to go figure out if I have a cavity that I didn't know about or something. Self-compassion is being vulnerable enough to keep trying to reach out. So even though I've had this bad experience with this family member and with this one group of women that I had reached out to, even though those weren't the right groups of people, even though I guess technically misjudged those relationships, I still am not wallowing because I am very hopeful for the future. I have other groups of people who thankfully are at this point still understanding that I'm a little different. I'm different in many ways anyway. I have a lot of personality quirks, but I'm always going to be a little different. I'm always going to have just a little difference in my life that other people don't have who haven't lost a child. I'm not going to identify myself with that. I'm not going to put that on, sign behind my name, child loss survivor. I don't always do that unless it's in a professional thing where I think someone needs to know that at this point. But definitely, if you're self-compassionate versus you're wallowing, you're going to reach out and keep trying to reach out because you have hope. If you have hope for the future, you keep trying. If you think that your business is going to get off the ground, you don't give up. You might even have a week where you're like, oh, this business is never going to take off. It's never going to work. Why am I trying? Why am I even bothering? But then you do have hope for it, so you put yourself right back in there and you try again. If you're wallowing, you don't do that. So I hope this helps you. Please comment below on any experiences you've had. Have you ever been accused of wallowing when you knew that you weren't? Or have you ever felt afraid of wallowing? How do you feel about this word and this topic? I'm gonna let you go, guys. I just wish that I could talk to you about these topics all day long. I think they're very important, but I hope that this has helped someone, and I hope you have a good day, not the day that you thought you might have based on what you're going through. But I hope that you are self-compassionate to yourself today. There are many people who feel that you should be. They are behind you. Get this man's book. If, order it on Amazon or something. They will really tell you that it's okay to work through your grief at your own pace and to work through it well so that you end up actually really working through it. If you avoid any steps, if you avoid any of the grief, then you carry it. And that's what actually this book is about, living in the shadow of the ghosts of grief. He talks about losses that you've carried even since childhood and things, which, in my case, my loss is a more sudden loss of my son dying in the last 3 years. But he talks about people who had losses in their childhood and never faced them, and yet they're still grieving. They just don't know it. And they have all kinds of issues with it. So anyway, have a great day, guys. I hope that this has been helpful for you. Bye-bye.